And hello, welcome. I'm Amy Beth Shaver. I turned this down and it still turned itself on. So,
rogue iPad.
I mean, it's like a child has a mind of its own. Good morning. How are you? I am Amy Beth Shaver with Allison Sinclair and JP. And we'll all have to stay tuned because Allison's fingers are flying.
Sorry. I'm here.
But she's doing
Barely.
stuff. And
There's so much happening.
I know there is so much happening, so much to get to. We have guests today. We have Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote. You may remember her story about Catherine and Greg going to jail after the 2020 election. It was a whole thing. Then we have Mike Ferris from the National Religious Broadcasters in relation to Jimmy Kimmel, Melania Trump, and a lawsuit. Stay tuned for that. It's Wednesday, which means we, of course, have Hot Flash News at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Surprise.
Of course.
Of course.
Okay. I'm going to have to find some flash and hot news.
Girl.
I forgot it was Wednesday. What the hell County Wednesday? What the hell
Wednesday.
County, Sinclair?
It is What the Hell County Wednesday, which means it also, before we take a tour around Twix, because some big news just broke, and do the montage. Like there's a lot we're cramming in 2 hours. All right. However, I have a request before I share with you the word of the day. It's a good word. You use this word every day. Probably. If you like our show, would you please share it with all your friends? Go follow us on socials. Subscribe to the newsletter that's eventually coming your way. It is. It's coming your way.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like that app that we're working on.
Yeah, we're working, but we're doing it. We're just working. Okay. So when you get it, you get it. But it's coming. All right. But today, before we do breaking news, before a tour around Twitter and such, guys, it's the word of the day from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. And it refers to forming theories about something without solid evidence.
Hypothesis.
Close.
Conspiracy.
Close. Keep going. It is used to describe guessing or taking risks on uncertain outcomes, such as speculating on the stock market.
Assumption. Assume.
A chance. I'm going to prophesy.
Is it a verb? It's a verb, right?
I
It
want
is
to
a
cheat.
verb. It's a verb.
It's a verb.
No cheating. I may or may not have said the word already.
Jump.
Jump.
I don't know.
No. Hold on. Read it again.
Refers to forming theories about something without solid evidence or investing in
Guess?
high-risk financial opportunities.
Okay. I'm going to.
What do stock market people do?
They invest.
And what else do they do?
They
Risk.
project.
You're close.
They.
What do they do when they're assuming something's going to happen? The word starts with an S.
We're going to feel really stupid.
Yeah, we are.
No,
We're
you're
gonna feel
not.
really
You're not gonna
stupid.
feel stupid.
I am subjecting. I am supposing. I am. That's not financial.
Short. Shorting.
I'm
Shorting.
calling.
You're
Wait.
calling. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Speculating.
Dang it.
Speculate.
Dang it.
It's a verb to speculate. We speculate.
fine.
Basically, we are professional speculators,
Speculate these.
right? What?
He said speculate D's. You need to
Guys,
put down the monster.
I needed one today.
We
Okay, I did.
still haven't played the D's Nuts Squirrel,
Oh,
the meth-fueled squirrel.
are you going to tell him what happened to you last night?
Yeah,
hold on.
you are.
Meth, squirrel, and
Yeah, the meth
why
squirrel.
we're drinking
Yeah,
Monster. Which
Monster.
one first?
I mean, I'll just say I won't go into all the details or where the restaurant is, okay? Because I'm not gonna defame. However, it was in the middle of the pouring down rain. Like my apartment was booming with thunder last night, and I was like, it was like 8:00, 8:30 ish. I was like, I'm hungry. I kind of want some like Chinese or Asian or something. So I went on the maps and looked up Asian food around me ish. And I didn't want panda, so I went to this place in Hoover. I'm driving through the pouring down rain, driving for my life, trying not to hydroplane. I get my food, come back, and I'm eating it. It's pretty good. And then there's something in the food. I won't say what it is. There's something in the food that should not be in the food.
Was it moving?
It wasn't moving.
Okay, so it was cooked.
But it could have been moving.
Oh God.
I threw the food away and was like, we'll see if I wake up throwing up in the middle of the night. I didn't. However, my stomach doesn't feel awesome today, but that's I had some bad Chinese last night.
What was your order?
I literally just got the sesame chicken with fried rice.
So it kind of looked like the rice.
It kind of looked like a rice or sesame seed, but I did some examining and it was not.
Oh, what's it?
It was not.
Is it a roach?
No.
We already told you what it was.
What was it? I wasn't paying attention.
What were you doing?
I was trying to upload our documents for reimbursement.
It's a pre-grown. It's a fetus of a fly.
It was a maggot. I would like to go home now.
How do you think
It was
I feel?
stir fried. He was fine.
How do you think I feel?
People eat those, in the wild. If you're caught out there, you just, stir fry them in your random walk that you have with you out in the wilderness. Duh.
You poke them with a stick and you roast them over fire.
They're probably crispy and delicious, like grasshoppers.
Well, you didn't die, but you probably didn't sleep well, hence the monster.
Oh.
Now that you said that, it's going to be another year before Chris Shaver wants Chinese food.
I will say this though, they gave me like 5 fortune cookies, and I got the same fortune back-to-back times, and it was the one I sent you.
That's funny.
The exact same fortune.
That is crazy.
Well, there is a better place near us, JP. I'll tell you off the air what it is. It's actually pretty good.
I'll just say this is it may have been a warning sign when I was placing my order at the counter, and the guy was like, "Is this your first time here?" I was like, mm-hmm. He goes, "Take a menu, go." Yeah. And I'm like,
that either means they have repeat customers, and that was just a one-off, or it means they haven't had many customers lately.
The latter, maybe.
It used to be the restaurant to go to in town when I was a little girl was where this place is.
The Red Pearl. You remember the Red Pearl?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the D's nut? Do you have the D's nut squirrel that was on meth?
Here, I'll go see if I can
find him because it made me laugh really hard, and people wonder why we say D's nuts. Well, it has to do with the meth fueled squirrel.
No, it has to do with the person that ran for president a few years ago, and he put himself on the ballot as D's nuts.
No, wait. Do y'all not know the original D's Nuts video?
No.
Oh my gosh, y'all.
Is
Help
this like
us.
John Mayer sings "Free Fallin'"?
Here,
This is the equivalent.
I'm gonna have to.
This is a Gen Z
Is it
word
appropriate?
moment.
Because we're a classy show.
It is.
So
I mean,
you can't.
it's appropriate.
It's appropriate enough.
Appropriate enough as saying D's nuts could be, but if we're gonna, y'all have to know the original.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. I
Feel
just
so
thought that
old.
was funny.
This is our boomer word of the day: is understanding where this actually came from.
Okay, so let's.
That way, Ash.
Wells Fargo supports a
Wells Fargo.
Sorry,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
Thanks. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. I had no idea. I just thought it was the. I thought it was a squirrel. I'm so behind.
You actually thought it was okay. I thought it was a presidential race. All right.
Who
We're both
was the
losers.
presidential race?
Loser.
Loser.
Thank you.
Loser. Wrong way. Loser.
Now we're looking up D's Nuts squirrel.
Yeah, the squirrel. I mean, I thought I was ahead of the curve.
I think you might need to type in meth too.
Yeah,
D's nuts squirrel meth.
I thought I sent it to you for a story
Actually,
for
it's
Clown
on
World.
our group chat.
You did, but I wanted to see if I can find it on this.
Okay,
computer.
all right, because it's funny. And listen, I don't know if the man swears or not.
Oh, that's
looks
him.
like
That's
he-
him. That's him.
He looks like he probably does.
Is this the
He
video?
lives in
Yes.
Alabama?
Yes, that's why I sent it.
Oh, gosh, look at all that meth.
Oh.
An Alabama man who faces charges over keeping a wild squirrel in a cage and giving it methamphetamine is scheduled to appear in court. WHNT TV reports that Mickey Polk was arrested last June by the Limestone County Sheriff's Office after receiving a tip that he was keeping an attack squirrel at his home. In the raid, police didn't find Polk, but they did find drug paraphernalia and a caged squirrel. Ronnie Reynolds, who was arrested at the home, told officers that the rodent belonged to Polk. The affiliate reports that authorities were unable to test the squirrel for meth, but did release it on the advice of the state's Game and Fish Division. According to AL.com, Polk was found 9 days later when leaving a hotel on a stolen motorcycle, and after ramming a police vehicle, he was arrested. Prior to his court appearance, Polk has posted videos on social media with a squirrel he claims to be the same one he previously had, denying that he ever gave the animal illicit drugs. The Alabama man faces a wild animal charge, possession of a controlled substance, possession of drug paraphernalia, and felon in possession of a firearm. If found guilty, Polk could face a maximum fine of $500 or 3 months in jail.
All right, I'm going to pull up the
Oh,
actual
it doesn't
video.
say his name is D's Nuts.
That's funny. I like
Okay.
how you pulled that news up right quick. But yeah.
I had no clue he was in Alabama or Crimestone County. That makes sense. I bet
Yeah.
there's lots of
Meth squirrels.
meth squirrels, yes, up there. But
Attack squirrel. Look
that's
at
it.
There's
Go back to the front. The first one. Alabama man charged for owning a meth-fed attack squirrel named D's Nuts.
see? This is what I found. So
You
I'm
need a
sorry I'm
job or
behind.
something. Okay,
Yeah.
bless it.
Something
Yeah.
coming in the mail today.
These are nuts.
Ha! Got him.
That's
That's
is-
from like my Vine middle school era.
Oh
Fine.
no way.
That was on
Wow.
Vine.
Oh, my kids are so embarrassed of me right now.
Was Vine before or after Musically?
I think it was technically right before. It was the same time ish.
Mm.
Because yeah, Musically was like the cringe. It was TikTok, but it was really cringe, and like only the girls did Musically, and then TikTok eventually became like cool. But yeah,
I
Musically.
remember Vine.
That reminds me of the Back It Up, Terry.
Terry! Back it up, Terry!
Hey, we're gonna have to play that on the 4th of July.
We are.
Can we play it before then?
We could.
Yeah, maybe every day.
Also,
I love that.
Vine is the reason my generation has such short attention span.
Yeah.
because
Oh,
of
really?
The 6 seconds. That's how long a Vine was.
Ooh,
6 seconds.
that's
But you'd be
short.
amazed how people would make what they could jam into a 6-second Vine and make it funny and like a whole thing. It was impressive.
Man.
Wasn't there talk of Elon bringing Vine back or something? Wasn't that? Yeah.
You just
at y'all,
can't. It's
techie.
past, unfortunately.
All right then.
Do we
So
have to
we've
do
cleared that
serious
up.
stuff?
Yeah, it's time for serious stuff. Should we dive into it or montage it? What do you guys choose?
Let's dive into it. Let's go into the
Let's do Twix because we need to hit the story that broke
Yes.
right before the show.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah,
I don't even know why I asked.
Is it not on there yet?
not. I don't know how.
You refresh that. There's no way it's
Ooh.
not trending.
I don't know
This
how.
is a big
I don't know how frequent
deal.
it populates.
okay.
Okay.
Well,
British Jews is trending before it.
Can you
Cute.
type?
voting rights.
There it is.
Mhm.
There it is. There it is. The voting rights. Click
Voting
on
right.
that.
Yep. Okay.
Here,
Guys.
let's play this video.
Do
real
we have a radio? Is that
So this, at first blush here, is a win for the plaintiffs who were not Black plaintiffs. They were non-minority voters who challenged this decision. These two districts that were minority majority. Essentially, Louisiana had drawn up districts, and then they were told in a legal battle that they had not represented Black and minority voters sufficiently. They went back and drew a second district. So they had two of these minority majority districts. Well, then non-Black voters sued and said, this is now violating our rights on the basis of race. So it looks like this is a 6-3 decision. There is one concurrence here, but it looks like the dissent sticks together with Justices Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson.
Shocker.
Ugh. So what does that mean, y'all? It means I can't say that. We're a classy show.
We are a classy show. So look, So, wow.
We're a classy show. We just spent the first 10 minutes talking about these
Well, I
nuts.
was going to make a D's nuts joke, but I stopped myself. But it basically means Alabama, hey, leadership, even if you weren't the Governor Ivy, you're the only one that can call a special session. So ultimately, this rides on you. But I'm saying, like right now, Will Ainsworth or Nathaniel Ledbetter or Gudger or Susan DeBose, I don't really care. Y'all get out there and get out in front of this and take the W all the way home. Start talking about this. Actually, Tuberville and Morgan Murphy put out, did y'all see that? They put out an op-ed yesterday talking about redistricting. Morgan Murphy ended the op-ed as candidate for 7th congressional district, kind of foreshadowing what was happening today. But y'all, somebody get out there, put your name as like you. Okay, Speaker Ledbetter, you actually can't call a special session. I think it just has to be the governor. Get out in front of it. Be bold. Mississippi's done it. Florida's doing it. Louisiana's done it. Texas has done it. Like, why
Please
don't be a loser anymore.
Yeah.
Please.
But this is one of the, like, I don't know, Amy Beth, if you have thoughts first. This is the typical, like, conservative battles that I feel like Alabama typically doesn't die on, unfortunately. But.
No, and this is one of the most important that we should die on. This is like plant your flag, let's go. Because it's a way to shore up what we've built and what the Republicans since 2010 have worked hard to become a really truly red state. And we've been zigzagged around by the courts, but now we don't have to be. Now we can go, nope, this is actually what we're going to do, and we're doing it. Done. Gosh, it'd be nice to be first. Or not first, but it would be nice to not wait and not be 45th in line to go do this. It'd be great to be in the top 10 even.
This is so much bigger, too, I have to say this, than just congressional districts or state districts, whatever. This is about DEI literally dying.
Yeah.
Like, finally, maybe this junk, we're basing everything on race, which is what, we were told not to do, but all of a sudden it's a cool thing to do. This is the beginning stages of that. Actually, we're maybe halfway through the dying process with this.
Mm-hmm.
This is huge. So the implications of saying, hey, only Black people are Democrats, done. So proud of the Supreme Court. There's some of them that you're like, no, they could go either way, but they didn't.
So now what's the process from here on out? So the Voting Rights Act is essentially deemed unconstitutional by SCOTUS, but now the onus is on the state legislatures independently to redraw their own maps. Like they have to they have to have the junction to do that. So it's deemed unconstitutional. So pretty much SCOTUS just gave states like Alabama the freedom and the air cover to redraw your maps, if it was based off of race. Now that's where the question comes in of, will the states actually do that? I mean, I know DeSantis has already got a map that they put out that they've redrawn, and Mississippi called a special session. What was that, last week? So
it has to happen within 21 days of today, because they said 21 days of the verdict or the opinion coming down. Yeah, the verdict.
My mind is, I'm processing, like you said yesterday, processing for a minute here out loud, because you're right. Number one, we have air cover, but number two, DEI is finally dying, which means number three, if we're going to take the redistricting seriously, we also have to dive into the issues that are going to come out, which is the race baiters will come out in full force.
Mm-hmm.
And they will try to rain on the parade and take away this victory by saying, no, we need this. But what is it that you actually need? Because what if this is an opportunity to get serious about the communities that may need help, but we've been lied to about the help that's been offered, because nothing ever changes. Nothing ever improves other than sanctifying and blessing victimhood. Everybody doesn't think they're a victim. I'm not suggesting that. But the leadership needs for people to be victims in certain communities. Is that fair? They need that so that they can win. They need that so that they can get what they want, like money and power and control, instead of actually dealing with the issues in their communities. And this is where we get in trouble every time, but it is what is true. Thomas Sowell is talking about it. Walter Williams has talked about it. Chad Jackson has talked about it. There's plenty of people. Vince Everett Ellison, the fatherlessness in Black communities. Look, white communities, we got our own issues. I hate the delineation, but the fatherlessness, the poverty rates, the leadership in the Democratic run cities, that the cities are atrocious, like Montgomery, Alabama. It should be a jewel in our crown, and it's atrocious. It's dangerous. And what are we told every time? No, leave it to us. We'll fix it this time. And it's not fair and it's not right. So perhaps removing the cover, now we've got the air cover of the Supreme Court, but removing the cover of DEI will actually have to face what's actually happening and deal with it. Like creating great schools, dealing with fatherlessness, and maybe electing leadership that's invested in the community flourishing and not being lied to. So for the next 70 years, they keep them in chains the same way they've done it. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. So maybe this is an opportunity to really tell people you're made in the image of God. We expect the best for you. This is what needs to happen. And here you go. Freedom. I think that's that's the other side of what this really means.
This is a huge decision, and you're right. And maybe now they'll have to address that, because this plan didn't work. This plan is kaputs. And praise God for that, literally, because it's so wrong. But the other thing that, this is a political move as well. And so Republicans, if it does not go against God's word directly, you do whatever you can do to win. Not just Republicans, but like the good people of the world. Forget political parties even. But like, if you have this opportunity to redraw these, I will say that the Republican Party today is much more in line with goodness and rightness and scripture. Not perfect. Okay. We have our issues, but I'll take the Republican Party over the satanic cabal of pedophiles, which is what I feel like they run on. Not just making that up. So Republicans, do it. Do it.
Just
harness the power and the opportunity you've been handed on a silver platter. Do it.
Real quick before we go to break. Yeah. Off the rip, percentage chance that a special session is called in Alabama before the 21 days.
Oh, let's speculate.
Okay.
Oh, that was good.
I'll say 30%.
41%.
I have faith.
Do you have faith?
80%.
Okay.
I do.
I
Our leadership in Montgomery, they want to do the right thing, and they're going to. Hey, y'all, we'll be back with Catherine Engelbrecht. Don't go anywhere.
We are joined by election integrity expert, Dr. Douglas Frank. We're thrilled to have him back with us. This time, we have a little more time for him to lay out just exactly what's going on, and what he has to share will blow your mind. Welcome.
Great to be with you ladies again. That was a fun interview last time, so I'm glad to be back.
It was fun. And now we have more time to dig in. When you left last time, we both looked at each other and were like, oh my word, because for years we've been told that Alabama is the gold standard in election integrity. And apparently we have some things we can work on.
Every state says they're the gold standard. It's like I think all the secretaries of states get together in some conference and say, let's all agree we're all the gold standard or something like that.
Yeah. Well, tell
Seems like it.
us a little bit about yourself before we really get into some of the data and the things that you've discovered. How did you get started in this? What is your background?
Sure. I'm a physicist. I was in the lab for 40 years, basically. And when I came out of the lab, I was like, what happened to my country? And what really brought me out was COVID. It was the COVID pandemic. I was teaching at a special school for high IQ kids. And one of my kids was a Chinese exchange student from Wuhan. And in November of 2019, I was teaching differential equations class, and he said, Dr. Frank, can we learn how to model epidemics? And so I began teaching how to model epidemics in December of 2019. And then the Wuhan epidemic took off, and we modeled it, and then I was modeling it in America. So everybody got to know me across the country because of my COVID modeling. I was modeling every country, every county in the country, and 30 countries, and I had like 150,000 people coming to my websites every week to how many people are going to die this week in our county. I mean, it seems morbid, but it's all mathematical. Epidemics are mathematical things. And so that kind of brought me into the public eye. I was in the public eye once before because I was nominated for a Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1990 for one of my discoveries. It got on the cover of Science and Nature and things like that. So
What did you discover?
Yeah. Well, you can't leave us hanging
Yeah,
like that.
mean,
I didn't
just
need to do that to you. Sorry
casually.
about that. Well, I figured out a way to make three-dimensional images of molecules. And it's
Okay.
the first time anybody had done that. And so it looks cool. It's, so it looks good on covers of magazines and brought me a lot of attention. For about a year, I was traveling the world teaching people how I figured that out. And then I left academics in 1996 because it was too political for me. It was disgusting to me. I didn't like
You
it.
were ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
I
sure.
mean,
truly.
in 1996, we thought the world was great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I was in Cincinnati too, and Mark Twain wrote about Cincinnati. He said, when the end of the world comes, he wants to be in Cincinnati because everything happens there 10 years later.
Oh,
it's
so-
true. I had family who lived in Cincinnati. That's a great place.
Oh, yeah. And it was a great place for me to raise my kids and everything. And I'm still out there in the country. We moved further out in the country now. So I have a lab out there. That's where I'd be right now, being a physicist out in the country, except that then the election happened and Mr. Lindell discovered me and then Mr. Trump. And so it's like now I've been thrust into this debate on elections. And I guess one of the next big thing was that when Pennsylvania did their audit, Doug Mastriano asked for an audit at the end of November of 2020. I was brought in as one of the 6 people that did their state audit because I'm a numbers guy, and they knew I was a numbers guy because they'd seen my COVID stuff. So that's really what thrust me in. Then Mr. Lindell discovered, he made a documentary about me called Scientific Proof. It was his second documentary. And then Trump featured me at his first rally after he was out of office in Wellington, Ohio. So suddenly tens of millions of people knew who I was, and everybody was saying, Dr. Frank, come help us, come help us. And here I am. Although in those days, we thought it was just going to be a 6-month job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
for
we
sure.
have to do is show everybody what's going on, and everybody's going to go, "Oh no, we have a problem. We got to fix it." That's what we thought. And I spent most of 2021 meeting with secretaries of states, AGs, hacking into their elections right in front of their faces, showing them that they were not the gold standard they thought they were, and it was quite a eye opener for me. I mean, when I'm a scientist, to me, you set up an experiment, you get the evidence, you present the evidence, and everybody goes, "Okay, now we do this." I was just assuming if I show everybody the evidence, that they would react accordingly.
Why don't they react accordingly?
I think there are multiple reinforcements of the current system. The first one is the oldest story ever. Since when does government relinquish power to the people? Governments centralize power. And right now in our country, the elections in every state are centrally controlled. They've been steadily, incrementally over about the last 25 years, just become centralized. Your own local clerks don't control or do anything anymore. They think they do, but they don't. And so that's a strong motivation. Also, it centralizes the outcomes of your election.
Welcome back to The Right Side. I am Amy Beth Shaver with Allison Sinclair and JP. We are thrilled. It's kind of amazing how these things happen, that this ruling just came down, and the very person who to us knows the most about this issue, because she spent her life working in election integrity, voting, and all the things. We are joined by Catherine Engelbrecht of True the Vote, among other things. So glad to have you today. Thank you for
Hey
joining
guys,
us.
thanks for having me, and congrats on the show. This is fantastic. I'm thrilled to be here.
We've
Thank
missed
you.
you. We haven't talked to you. There's so much to catch up on. So it's great to
Yeah.
have you here. I feel like the past few months have probably been full for you, and a lot's going on in the country. But for the people that are joining us that may not really know your background, kind of how you got here, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know there's a lot you could say. Please include the part where you went to prison.
Well, I will tell you that that's not a sentence that I had ever expected would be a recommended high point in my bio, or that I would even have in my bio, but it's true. Bottom line is, I never expected any of this. This was not my life plan. I have an oil and gas background. I used to run a manufacturing company back in the day, and in 2008, I guess it was, from perspectives including the oil and gas industry to healthcare. I was a caregiver for both my parents, to my kids' school. They were little at the time, and I just felt like everywhere I turned, government was encroaching. And so when the Tea Party sort of burst onto the scene, I felt like I could identify with that movement. That it seemed to be a movement of people that were many of us for the first time engaging in politics, and in a way, I thought that this was the appropriate next step. What can we do to actually make a sustainable difference? And so I began going to the rallies, just like millions of other Americans. Quickly realized, we've got to find a way that we can translate that passion into action. And an election was coming up, and there weren't enough volunteers. And so a very small group of us said, why don't we go volunteer? We'll just do that for a day. We'll check that off our good citizen list and move on to the next thing. And when we served, it was really the beginning of this now, I guess, 16-year long odyssey, because there were fundamental problems in the process that I was naive enough to believe at the time could be quickly remedied. That is, if they were pointed out, certainly people would move to correct the gaps. And that shouldn't be a heavy lift. I mean, shouldn't be that hard to register people to vote, to keep their voting history secure in a voter file, and to conduct an election and then cast votes and count votes. That shouldn't be that hard. We can put a man on the moon. Why can't we have an election? So turns out that there's a lot more to the story, but recognizing that there were a lot of intentional vulnerabilities that were baked into the system. And the more I began to explore what that really meant for folks like us who are just trying to have fair and honest elections, the more troubling it became. And so I started True the Vote in 2010. And at that time, it was a very lonely battlefield. There were not many people that were looking at election integrity matters. They perceived this to be just something that was on the fringe of importance. My argument was always, it is the foundation of all that is important, because everything we do presupposes a free and fair election. And so who we elect into these offices is the whole. It's the whole story. 2020 changed all of that. People burst onto the scenes. I think largely because of COVID, many people were at home and watching things much more closely than they maybe had in the past. They saw in real time the game changing. $500 million from Mark Zuckerberg dropped into the system, and drop boxes out that were totally unregulated, and just so many things that didn't make sense. People started asking questions, and there was a sea change after 2020. True the Vote got involved in a couple of different research projects. One was using cell phone data to determine whether or not we could prove that the same cell phones were going repeatedly to drop boxes, which we did prove, and turned that all over to law enforcement. They did nothing with it. And ultimately, it became a movie called 2000 Mules. And then I guess the second big project was a project where we looked into an election software company called Conic. And it was a company, a front company out of Michigan, ostensibly out of Michigan, but really being run out of Beijing. And by exposing that, and there's a whole long story behind it all, but it ended up with myself and my research partner, Greg Phillips, both going to prison for a period of time until we were released by emergency order from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And it's been an odyssey, but it's still hard for me to imagine if these things hadn't happened to me. And there's so many more things. I mean, so many things have happened along the way. And if they hadn't happened to me, and if I was just listening to this story being told, I'd say, nah, there's just that can't be. That just no. But I'm here to tell you, I'm living proof with the scars to prove that it did happen and is happening. And we are, I think now, officially, maybe finally, at the tipping point for this country. 2026 is going to tell us an awful lot. 2028. Things are stranger and stranger.
The only reason, and I know talking about going to prison, and it's not glorious. And there's some stories that I've heard from you and Greg as well that kind of make me giggle. And we actually had a discussion on the show the other day of like who would last longer in prison, me or Amy Beth, And so you're like, it seems kind of crazy to talk about. But my point with that is you started out not unlike we did.
Exactly.
And any of us that are involved in the political process, that could be us in just a few short years. That's where we are in America. And so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, I appreciate the question. And I'll just say, I think you both do really well in prison. You don't back down. You don't back down from a fight. And I think you'd also, like me, you'd realize pretty quick that, even in those confines, we are all a lot more alike than we are different. And, life's journeys, I turned right when other people turned left, and, they ended up there, and for a short time I did too. We're a lot more alike than we are different. And we'd be well served to remember that, particularly in these times when we are so divided as a country. It's really critical that we continue to strive to find a common humanity, because there are a lot of folks out there that would just as soon have us all fractured, beyond repair. It serves them well because it's a device of control, and we've got to constantly remind ourselves to look for those common threads, even when it's hard, because it's those threads that bind us and what makes us a country, a place that we can raise our kids. So we have to keep working.
That's a good word. And it's also a great, not really even a pivot, but uniting us more than dividing us with this Supreme Court decision, because it's removing air cover from those who want to divide by race and say, no, actually, you can't do that anymore. But could you talk to us about that, seeing as how it just happened? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Section 2 of the National Voter Registration Act has long been a flashpoint that has basically up until this decision, it froze our country in the 60s, and tried to every cycle whip into a frenzy this idea that that the racial prejudices of old are still who we are as a country. And from that, it facilitated a lot of lawsuits, many of which we were on the receiving end of improperly. But it created a cottage industry for legal gamesmanship in elections. And what the Supreme Court finally said was, we're not in the 60s. It's 2026, and we need to stand together as a country. And so removing that idea of race-based districting or race-based segmentation, I think it was long overdue. Of course, there was lots of weeping and gnashing of teeth on the left because that is their pillar. That is the baked in fallback of racism that they want to continue to try to tell us, defines the character of Americans. And I'm thrilled to say that it hasn't for a long time. And now the Supreme Court has made it the law of the land. So was a huge step forward.
Along those lines, tell us your thoughts on the Save America Act. Anything that you would change? What you see the benefits? Do you think it'll pass? What are you hearing?
Yeah, it won't pass, and it was never going to pass. I appreciate the idea for sure, but the votes were never there, and even if it were to pass by some strange, who knows, some strange backroom deal, it would have been so dogpiled on with lawsuits that there's no way it would have had impact by 2026. But what it did do, though, I mean, the reason I still think it's important, because I mean, that's probably a pretty harsh way to come right out of the gate, was never going to pass, but that's the reality. But it was the idea that I think is the win. The fact that the idea of requiring debate around who can vote, what does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to conduct an election that can be accurately tracked and supported by virtue of mail ballot processing? I mean, there are just some fundamental things, and it was the debate that was so important. It was kind of like that seminal moment this year in the State of the Union when President Trump asked, who is for non-citizen voting, and the questions around who representatives stood for. Did they stand for American citizens or for non-citizens? And we saw one side of the chamber stand in defense of American citizens, and the other side clearly had a different agenda. It was, one of those sort of eye-opening moments of who really is in leadership in this country and what their goals really are. So the Save America Act brought some of those similar themes to bear. I think it was incredibly important that the ideas were debated, but the most exciting thing that has happened is we have seen states move to adopt their own forms of the Save America Act. Now, we've seen blue states move immediately to try and defeat. If the Save America Act were to have passed, they wanted to have legislation on the books to prevent it. But red states said whether or not the Save America Act passes at the federal level, we see it as value for our state, and so we're going to begin to put those wheels in motion to make sure that we are protecting our elections at the state level. So as much as anything, look, I just think it's incredibly important that we keep talking about it. A lot of it is political, showmanship, but it's the ideas that will live on and take root in different ways and wake up Americans, which is a hard thing to do. You've really got to pound messages in for people to really begin to understand it. So I don't imagine that the Save America Act will pass. But I do see things happening at the state level that support the ideas. And for that, I'm very grateful that Save America was debated in the upper chambers of our federal government, because it had impact locally.
I love your perspective on that, because so often we got caught up, or I get caught up in whether or not something passes versus the idea, because the idea is what generates further ideas. And you're right, other states are going, wait a minute, we can do this ourselves, which is really the beauty of America, is it's state by state. And it shows who's paying attention and who wants action. And I think that is super encouraging, even as we watch John Thune go on and on about why they can't.
Right.
It's also true that he never intended to let anything happen. So
it's tough, right? Because the only way that he would have been able to do it is to get rid of the filibuster. And what people don't understand, maybe what I perceive is sort of a limited understanding of the process, is that because of the way the Save America Act was introduced, it was just introduced as general legislation. It is true that that the filibuster has been canceled in judicial appointments, in nominations, and so that's like a certain type of process that they did away with the filibuster just to be able to, break the political logjam and get people into key positions in government. So that's like on the books and it's happened. But if they were to get rid of the filibuster on general legislation, once those rules in the Senate are changed, that it's permanent. And so what would happen is that would mean you'd never have the filibuster. There would never be a speed bump for anything ever again. And when the Democrats take control of the Senate, which invariably will happen, you can be assured that they would wield that lack of filibuster as a lethal weapon, and you would see legislation flying into law faster than you could blink, and we would regret, I believe, that decision. So I don't envy Thune, and I it's easy to be the armchair quarterback and say, oh, I would have handled it differently. There's a lot going on always behind the scenes that we can't fully recognize, but it's a tough call. It's a tough position to be put in. But I think that President Trump, he is a master negotiator, and master negotiators, like Jedi level negotiator, even though it may not always feel that way. He takes big risks because he plays, big league ball, and pressing like he did, I think, as I said earlier, as much as anything else, was about forcing the debate, forcing it out into the open. And yes, the weediness of the filibuster, and that people were frustrated by that, and I can absolutely appreciate it. But President Trump is playing a different game. And we see that geopolitically. We see that in election integrity matters. He's forcing conversations, knowing that the process itself may not support seeing those things be enacted in law, but you will not be able to put the cork back in the bottle of Americans' awareness and demand. And if it happens at the state level, then that's the win.
I do think one of the ways that this whole conversation has been really good is that it's exposed a lot of our congressional members and kind of their stance. And maybe that is part of the strategy too. Put a little bit of pressure, make them have to come out and say yes or no. I mean, because this subject has not gone away. I don't know how it does. But I want to move on to a little more personal subject, to a friend of ours. We have known, well, not as long as you, but Greg Phillips for years. We have walked through and saw him almost every day for several years. And specifically when he was going through his most recent bout with cancer. He's had several. In fact, I kind of look at him, I'm like, I can't keep up with you. Obviously, God has a plan for you because you are still here and there's no explanation for it. But his last treatment round, I mean, I'll be honest, I remember going in and Abs, I can't remember if you were with me, but having a conversation with one of his sons about kind of preparing for taking care of him, how we could help his boys and, and just kind of the whole, I honestly, and I think he will tell you this, I did not think he was going to make it. When he started his kind of experimental treatment, you remember him coming in and talking about he couldn't see?
Yep, I do remember.
Like it was just to watch him go through that was really hard and heartbreaking. Number one, it also was so inspirational because he never stopped. He never wavered on what his mission was. If I'm waking up today, I'm doing something. God has a plan for me. Greg is also an extremely spiritual person.
Yes.
And I know he's traveled extensively to foreign countries. I remember him going to Nicaragua and having some experiences there in some of the revivals. And that can all be debated. What came to the forefront recently was on your all's podcast, Onward, him talking about teleporting to a Waffle House. And I was gone the day, but Amy Beth said he actually came on our radio show and spoke about it as well. So y'all can know more. But what's your take on that? And what should our response be to that?
Oh, well, I'll start with the last question. Our response should be, praise Jesus, it's a miracle.
Mm.
And if you are a Bible believing Christian, the idea of being transported or translated is another term that is often used. I mean, the Bible is replete with examples of that sort. And I think it really forces the question. I mean, what do we believe as Christians? And we are living in days of miracles, and I in some ways I think that history will show that the insane amount of publicity around that statement and I'll get into the backstory of how it all came to, how Greg found his way onto a skit on Saturday Night Live. I mean,
Wait, what?
We missed that.
oh yeah.
Really?
Oh, it was
That
everywhere. Every
famous?
late night comedian, Saturday Night Live. I mean,
I have to go find
it
that.
was an all-out feeding frenzy on this idea that and let me kind of back into all of it. First of all, I have known Greg for a long time. I have never not known him to be struggling with some kind of health concern because of something that happened before I knew him, which was in 2010 he went as a first responder in the Haitian earthquake of 2010. Still the single greatest loss of human life in one event, 250,000 people killed, and mercy only knows how many more injured. And Greg just has a heart for service, and he goes to the places of greatest need. He's done that his entire adult life, and there's nothing, as you guys know, there's nothing that's going to stop him. When he gets an idea of how he can help, or he sees a way, he just goes for it. And in that instance, there was no functioning x-ray machine in the entire country of Haiti. There was no functioning x-ray machine. And you had parents holding their children who had been injured with crush injuries. When you have an earthquake like that and you think about the mountains of Haiti, and the way the housing worked, the houses just all slid down from the mountainside, one on top of the next. So you had all these crush injuries, and you can't tell what's happening, what's going on inside the body if you can't see it. And so he moved swiftly to have an x-ray machine donated and flew over in one of our military planes himself with this crated x-ray machine. And when they got onto the tarmac at Port-au-Prince and saw parents holding their children in a line for as far as the eye could see, because the word was that an x-ray machine was going to be delivered, they uncrated it and there were no lead aprons. And so it was a moment of decision, right? I mean, who's going to take one for the team and hold those children, but be themselves exposed to radiation? And Greg said, I'll do it. And so for weeks, because of the inefficiency of our government, they did not get lead aprons into that environment for weeks and weeks and weeks. And during that time, Greg, for as long as he could stand, just was the one who held the children so the x-rays could be taken. How many tens of thousands of x-rays, who knows, but it left him with radiation poisoning. And as he came back to the States, of course, he thought maybe he came back with malaria. He wasn't thinking about, radiation poisoning due to x-ray exposure, but that's what happened. And the doctors told him at that point, look, for the rest of your life, you're going to have to be very mindful of signals your body is sending, because your T cells have now been irreparably changed, and you're going to be particularly susceptible to cancer. So in 2019, when he was first diagnosed with prostate cancer, in true Greg Phillips fashion, he was given the diagnosis. You have, I don't know if at that time if it was stage 3 or stage 4, but it was bad. It was very aggressive right out of the gate, very aggressive prostate cancer. And they wanted to start him immediately on traditional treatments. And he said, no. And you ladies may remember this. He said, I'm going to go get my head right with God. And he flew to Spain and walked a pilgrimage called the Camino de Santiago, a 550 walk across Spain on foot. And during that time had some very spiritual experiences. But I've walked the same walk myself after him, and after being inspired by him. And I can tell you, just truthfully, my walk was very different from his, because I was like, I've got all my Audible books and I've got all I'm going to get caught up on my reading. And, and I look back now, and I see, I think I was running from talking to God and being alone with God, if I'm just going to be totally transparent. I think that was probably too much for me to take in mentally, just to walk and talk to God for 550 miles over a month, day in, day out, 16-hour days, just walking and talking to the Lord. But that's what Greg did. Greg brought no books. He didn't wear headphones. He just walked and got his head right with the Lord. He came back and did a short stint of radiation that did not work, but it was during, I say did not work. It didn't have the desired impact on the cancer. Cancer continued to progress, but it was during that first go round. Of course, it was during COVID, right? So just to get treatment for cancer was quite an ordeal, because Greg and I actually used to laugh, because he would send me pictures of going into the sort of cancer wing of the hospital where he was being treated, and it was just a ghost town. And we would kind of laugh like, COVID cured cancer. Yay, it's so great. Because nobody was coming out for treatment. And so anyway, he went through all that by himself, because of course I couldn't be there with him, and he was actually seeking treatment in Georgia. And there were some supernatural things that happened. And after each occurrence, or immediately, like within seconds of things happening. One time I actually was sort of proximate to the occasion, because I was on a phone call with him, and we can get into whatever level of detail you want about these things, but they did happen. And we didn't pass any kind of judgment on what it all meant, except that we knew that Greg was, struggling, that his health was on the ropes, and that he was walking in absolute faith, and things were happening. But we never talked about that publicly. And so you think about that was 2019 and early in 2020. So that's like before 2000 Mules, or during, actually, it was all during 2000 Mules and during Connick and during the prison. All of this was happening. We never spoke about it publicly. But then, shortly after we got out of prison, he had a dream that the Lord told him. By the way, let me just time out here. Do you guys want me to tell you this much detail, or I can go faster?
I mean, I am, because he is a friend. I would love to hear. I mean, I think we have about 5 more minutes. So if you
okay.
Yeah.
Let me, I'm just going off on it, but let me just, let me wrap it up then. He had been told that in the dream that the cancer had come back, but the Lord said, I've got it, but it's back. And sure enough, he goes to, and he'd been feeling worse and worse. And sure enough, he was told he had stage 4 metastatic bone cancer and about 12 to 18 months to live, get his affairs in order, which is probably the part of the conversation that you guys were having earlier, right, that you were experiencing this. It was my bright idea to come up with a very aggressive protocol, heavily dependent upon ivermectin and fenbendazole at toxic levels that we didn't really understand were toxic. We just thought they were the high end of the possible protocol. And it did do all kinds of things to him. But along that journey, or in the beginning of the journey, it was a 12-week protocol. And it was my bright idea to say, hey, why don't we document all of this on my podcast? And you can come on once a week and you can talk about how it's going. And so the very first week of the protocol, where it was like talking to somebody that had just had their, wisdom teeth removed and were coming out from under anesthesia. I mean, that's like talking to Greg. He was just filterless, and he doesn't even remember being on it. Well, but what he said in that was, it was my question was, tell us about the time you were teleported. And he just answered the question, and it felt very much like just he and I were having this conversation. And, then he gets to go to work for FEMA, and the left begins their assault, or the swamp, really more specifically. They find this podcast. They don't give him an opportunity to explain any of it, that he was heavily medicated at the time, or that those things really did happen, and glory to God. Maybe not in the way that he described them on the podcast when he was loopy on meds, but nonetheless, they happened. And what's followed since then, I will just say, is both it was probably the most chaotic whirlwind of press I've seen ever. But also the conversations that it has started, the outpouring of support from the Christian community, from cancer survivors, from people dealing with cancer. God's got another plan, always has for Greg, and he's going to stand by the truth, even if that truth doesn't, maybe look or feel like any of us have experienced. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and he's going to stand on it. And I think God's honoring that he's being obedient, and I'm excited to see what's next.
Thank you, Catherine, for sharing that story and for sharing your insights. We certainly hope you'll come back and we can ask even more questions. But we really appreciate you. And I don't know, we just think you're awesome. And your example of the way that you've lived and the things that you've accomplished are incredible. So thank you for that as well.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Yep. Awesome. She just is like, I could talk to her forever. And Greg, Greg is one of the hardest workers. It's like he doesn't do anything casually. Maybe I started thinking last night about this interview. I was like, why don't we teleport to like Perry's next time?
Yeah.
Not Waffle House. That'd be so much better. But I have not done my biblical research on teleporting. I will do that. But I do know, regardless, meds, God, I don't know. Greg is doing a great job at FEMA. And he pours his whole heart into what he does. And I think, he's right where I can't imagine. Remember after the North Carolina floods, he spent so much time over there with rescue and recovery. He was kind of made for that job. So anyway, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
I said electrons. You put me in science mode there for a minute, and so because I was using.
No one blames you. Want to go back to simpler times? I get it.
Yeah. I mean, I since I was a boy, I read Wrinkle in Time when I was in 3rd grade, and ever since then, I've wanted to have my own physics lab in the country. I do, and that's where I'd be. But except my country went away, and so I have to. I'm a patriot. I have to fight for my country. You can't. There are people dying for the freedoms we have, and I think it's our civic duty to step up and do our job. I mean, think about it. All these years I got to get government funding and scholarships to do all this great science work. It's like I've a blessed life. So it's my tour of duty, my turn to help.
Before we dig into Alabama numbers and kind of what you're finding here, give us an overview, because you travel the country.
Yes.
You meet with lots of different groups in different states. Nationally, what are you seeing? Are we trending in the right direction? Are we making headway on a national scale? And then let's drill down and talk about what's going on in Alabama.
I think the first principle people need to understand is that there isn't one legislature in this country that wants election reform. There isn't one. Every single one is going the opposite direction. And so, like, for example, when I'm in Oregon, everybody says, oh, it's those evil Democrats. But here I am in Alabama, and you guys are like super red, and yet your legislature is trying to pass laws to make it even harder to audit your elections. What's going on here? And you would think that in the reddest legislatures or reddest states, they would want to fix their elections. But you have a bill right now before your legislature trying to make it even harder for people to have access to your voter rolls, and you're already the second least transparent state in the country in terms of your elections. So it's like that's an eye-opener to people. Everybody wants to think that, oh, sure, certainly our legislature, this is in red states, so certainly they'll want to fix it. And no, it doesn't work that way. That's a big mind change for people to recognize that.
Are you speaking about the bill to reduce fees?
Yes.
Okay, how does that make it more difficult?
So the bill was, as it was originally proposed, was going to take information out. So they were saying, we're going to make it cheaper, but we're going to give you, it took out the critical information. And you're already not giving the, for example, I've been working with your teams here. I just came from Mobile and I came from Autauga, and they're complaining, Dr. Frank, this is really hard. And it is, because in other states, they give you tons more information than you get here. And you have to pay for it. and it's limited already, and they wanted to limit it even more. It should be exactly the opposite. If you go to Ohio, for example, or go on their Ohio website, Secretary of State website, just click. You can download it for free. Go to Florida, click, download it for free. Way more information for free. But in your state, you have to pay exorbitant fees for less information, and they wanted to make that even less information.
So is it because it's back to what you said at the beginning? You've presented the evidence, they ignore it, it's centralized, it's layered. I mean, is it all of those things, or is there something that's specific to Alabama in addition to, we see that they're not transparent. We've experienced that.
Yeah.
Like, what else are we missing?
I think the main thing we're missing is that people have become conditioned into waiting for somebody else to fix the problems. You know, you're too young, you don't remember, you ladies, but when I was a boy, we ran our own elections. The PTA moms walked the precincts, and the parties, the Republican and Democrat representative in every precinct, took the precinct book. And every 2 years, every door was knocked on, making sure that the books and the precincts were up to date. Since about 2002, we've just steadily lost our role as citizens. Now we wait for other people to fix our problems rather than us. We wait for other people to teach our children. We wait for other people to run our elections. We wait for other people to run our government. But America's an experiment in self-government. It's supposed to be us doing these things. How's it working out when we're letting other people teach our kids? How's it working out when we're letting other people run our government? Plato said the penalty for refusing to get involved in politics is you end up being governed by your inferiors. And here we are. Any one of you pick a random person off the street, they'd probably be better governor than the one you got. Okay, I mean, it's a bad situation.
Right.
So really, I think that's the fundamental problem: is that we the people, and this is a good thing for Alabama, but we the people have forgotten that it's our country, that we're supposed to be doing stuff. Now, in your state, you are full of people who have really good, solid values. That is refreshing when I'm here in Alabama. But because of that, you're more trusting. And because of that, you know, when I walk into a county and say, hey, your elections are all corrupted, they look at me like, no, our clerk is great. We love her. We go to church with her. Our kids go to school together. It's like, it's
That
like,
couldn't possibly happen.
couldn't possibly happen here because we're great people, right? I mean, and I get that. But what they don't understand is the problem isn't your people. The problem is that they are subservient to a system that's being imposed on you. So, for example, if you were to go to, let's say you move into a county here. We're in Shelby, I think, right now.
Hi, welcome back. Listen, if you want to follow Catherine, you can follow along with her at True the Vote. You can follow along with her at Onward Media. You can go back if you haven't watched 2000 Mules. You know, you remember when people were scoffing at those who doubted the security and I think the word is veracity, the reality of what the 2020 election really was versus votes being stolen. And now we know they were right all along. Catherine and Greg told the truth, which is why they went to jail. That's the bottom line. And they are incredible people. So check them out. You're going to want to follow along with what they have to say. Both of them are also, of course, in addition to owning several businesses, great writers and great communicators. So if you want to know what's happening, follow them. Follow Catherine Engelbrecht. She's incredible. We'll have her back. But wow, what a story. Now, before we have it's really good. And it's really encouraging because here's the thing that I'm convicted by when I'm listening to her is when you're walking by yourself and you're walking and praying, wouldn't the world be a better place if we put everything away and just got ourselves right with God and stayed that way?
Yes.
And wouldn't it be better if we made time for the divine? Because he's already here. I mean, it's the same reason I was watching King Charles, and I know part of this is in the montage, but I was looking at watching them last night. My husband was like, you're eating this up, aren't you? Yes. I love the royals. Okay. We're going to wear our crowns in heaven. I'm just getting myself ready for that idea. But he started comparing and talking about the great relationship the United States had with the UK and the long history. And I was like, okay,
Some
well,
dicey parts in there.
yeah, there is some few, and he was able to joke and it was delightful, but I thought, wow, thinking about where both countries used to be and where they are today, and then looking at the glory of the dinner and the flowers and the candles and the moment, we don't stop enough to have moments. We don't stop enough to have conversations. And we certainly don't dig into the word enough to go, we're going to make fun of things we don't understand. We're going to belittle what seems ridiculous to us until it's your time. And then it becomes serious. So don't wait until it's serious. Do it now. But I was very convicted about silence and communication with our Creator. And I loved her story, and I loved Greg's story. Even though we're walking with him in it.
Yeah.
It's convicting.
It was hard to watch, and I don't know how I missed the SNL. I saw everything else. But it was hard to read the headlines and watch, having the perspective of seeing him almost every day. Oh my gosh, it makes me a little teary. Like how sick he was. Like
could barely walk, pain.
Could barely walk. I mean, in that conversation with one of his sons of like, we will help you. We will help get things in order. Several days where I wasn't sure he was going to walk through the door the next day. So for him to be here, whether you think he teleported to Waffle House or not, is an absolute miracle. And, and he is still doing really good work and has not given up and has persevered. And it's incredible to watch. So we can debate a lot of those things. We can research, we can learn. I didn't know teleporting was in the Bible.
Well, I know that when Paul had his vision, did he not? Well, he had several visions, but was transported in the spirit. So there are stories that are really, we can dig into that. That'd be a
Maybe
fun
we'll
thing
do
to
a
talk
plunge
about.
on it.
We should.
That's a good plunge.
We should do a plunge. There's so much we could plunge into just based off of that interview, but because we have other things, we will move on. And we'll finally get to the montage, which will be boring after the conversations we've already had. But it's not boring because JP put it together. So JP, take it away.
Black News. Has indicted former FBI Director James Comey for a second time.
We're told this is related to an Instagram post from the former FBI director last year when he posted on the beach. You may remember there was a formation of shells that said 8647.
A lip reader has revealed what President Donald Trump and King Charles whispered about in the opening moments of the British monarch's trip to the White House on Monday, that Putin wants war. The king tries to brush it off with, "We will discuss this later," before the president warns, "I've got a feeling if he did what he said, he will wipe out the population." Once again, the king tries to end the conversation on Putin, saying, "Another time."
You know, it's interesting. Last night we were given a list of do's and don'ts for the king by the speaker. And we were told, no selfies, no touching, no hugging, no conversations. And it really sounds like a list of don'ts, for the royal family with victims more than members of Congress.
You're an advocate for abortion, for abortion policy. What's your favorite type of abortion?
I am an advocate for patients having access to the full realm of reproductive health care.
This one is called dilation and curettage. After dilation of the cervix, a sharp looped knife is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut into pieces and extracted, often by suction. Do you prefer that method?
What I believe we are here to talk about today is the FACE Act.
That is how you do it. Brandon Gill, my new favorite congressperson. That is how it's done. Okay.
More of that.
But first, Trump, the king, RMS Trump, 1944 Bell. Thoughts? Oh, and also the lip reading.
Okay. I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Do y'all take much stock in lip readers? Like, do you think
I just watched a lot of bad lip reading with my children. Remember those videos?
Yes, I
They're
do.
a hoot.
I don't know if that is actually what was said. That's kind of crazy. We haven't heard much about the Russian-Ukraine war lately, but and Trump is, at least privately, I don't think Trump is very exaggerative and hyperbolic, in terms of one-on-one conversations. Obviously, he can't be publicly, but if he actually said that, and that's a legit concern with Putin maybe wanting a bigger war, and that's concerning. But I just thought that was interesting. A lip reader caught that and said specifically that was said.
Sinclair, what do you think?
I mean, I think two things are wild from last night. The lip reading, if that's true, like that's how casually we like settle World War 12 or whatever we're on.
We're on like 14.
Yeah, we're like, hey, he kind of wants to blow him up. Yeah, well, hey, can we just talk about it later? Because we've got bees to go. We got to go to the new bee house. Did y'all see that?
Yes.
To me, that was like the most power boss move. If you see that picture of Trump holding that one bee, and King Charles is like, no. And Melania is like really looking. I'm like, and he's just like smiling at the bee. But, and now I lost the other thing I was going to say. Oh, and did you know that Melania gave the queen? Do you know what her gift was to the queen?
What?
6 Tiffany sugar spoons.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I don't know why. I mean, it's kind of cool. I guess maybe in England, because I'm watching Bridgerton, they're like, oh, I have 6 Tiffany sugar spoons and you only have 5. Like maybe that's a big deal. But it seems so like with where we are in the world, I'm like, really? We still are like giving these gifts. Now, did you know what King Charles gave Trump?
Yes. It's awesome.
The original drawings of the Resolute desk.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay, that's cool.
That's cool.
And at dinner, keep going.
Well, I don't know what happened at dinner.
And at dinner, he gave him the HMS Trump bell from 1944 that had been on the HMS Trump. And they didn't ring the bell last night. It was awesome. That's what he presented to him at dinner. Incredible. Trump leapt up and was ready to get on the stage, and then King Charles was still speaking. But those
kind of gifts are cool.
Like how do you give people things when they have everything?
Well, you give the sentimental things.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Like, I don't know. I'm
thoughtful, the thoughtful kind.
Thoughtful.
Yeah, I like tea. Okay. I mean, look, this is why they have a chief protocol officer, because I'd hug them. Well, of course I wouldn't, because we know things, but you'd want to hug them. You'd want to do all the things you're not supposed to do. And that's why there's a chief protocol officer. And she was like, well, this wouldn't be a completely lame gift. Maybe a little lame, but maybe it's a great gift. I don't know.
Maybe there's some history there too. So I shouldn't. Are those orange rolls?
Oh, those
I see
is
coming
that
in the door.
What? And we're hungry today.
You're not on camera, Dad.
So okay, it's okay. But the thing that I was saying earlier is that looking at moments like that, and I know you're like, when I was comparing Greg and his walk and the pomp and circumstance, is that we don't take time to do things that perhaps we should. We don't take time to be quiet and thoughtful. And we also don't do things like these glorious dinners that used to be standard, even for regular Americans. We're in such a rush. We're busy. We're distracted. We're anxious. And I was reminded looking at the dinner last night and then listening to Catherine is what really made me think about it. We used to take time to do things like fellowship and communicate. And that to me was inspiring from last night. Also, I didn't know King Charles was funny.
Yeah,
he's a funny dude.
Good, funny sound bites. Yeah.
So
I do think Tim Burchett broke every single protocol rule.
Did he wear his Carhartt jacket?
Did y'all see like twice he like grabbed the king, and apparently they were talking about Aston Martins and cars and stuff. But yeah,
darling.
I don't know anybody else that could break every rule and get away with it.
Can you imagine? Imagine King Charles trying to understand Burchett.
Dadgummit.
No.
King.
I beg your pardon.
But think about it. They've said that if you speed up south, I don't know what our English is. If you speed it up it's the closest to British that there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the
it's like
British
a-
dialect.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. It's like
should
a
say.
it's like a tang on.
Really?
It's like a
Yes.
twist on British
Yes.
dialect, like the Southern Appalachian.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Do we have some sort of little device that will just spade up Clotus?
I'll
And
find
we
it.
can see if he sounds British.
Well, you know, there's an island right off of North Carolina. It is North Carolina, and they still speak that very strange dialect that sounds British. Have you heard?
Mm-mm.
What, guys?
Mm-mm.
I probably have. I've seen videos about Southern
You're making
Appalachia
No.
accents being closest to British.
I'm gonna Google's it.
I think
Google
it's
it.
probably if King Charles just spoke a little slower and had molasses coming out of his mouth. That'd probably be pretty
I think you're right.
Is there
Because then we
an
can speak
island
to
off of
North Carolina. I forget the name of it.
Red Rum.
That has its own
that
own dialect.
speaks Britain?
Speaks an old dialect. Just put an old dialect. It'll pop up. The Googles will say, all right, ready, set.
Yes, you're probably
Ta-da!
thinking of Ocracoke
Yeah, that's it.
Island as
That's
part
it.
of the Outer Banks.
Charles knows.
For
He knew I wasn't making
generations,
that up.
residents have spoke a distinctive dialect known as Ocracoke Brogue, which preserves elements of the older Elizabethan English language. Well, dang it, she was right.
Listen, I didn't get
Audio
to be,
examples. Let's click on this.
See, guys.
This might be.
If you stick with me, you'll be great at Trivial Pursuit. That's what we're all learning today.
I do love.
About 150 speakers of the Ocracoke Brogue now, and they all live on one end of this barrier island on the coast of North Carolina, which is basically an
we'll get to
enlarged
it.
sandbar dialect that is not identified.
He's talking way too much.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find that. That was the narrator. You were right. Give it up. I should never question you.
Okay, so that's
Right.
fun, just for fun. You know that. You know the word speculate, and you know there's an island called Ocracoke Island, and they have a funny dialect. Okay, there we go. All right, next on the story list, beyond Trump and the king, Putin, who knows anything at all. We have two things quickly. James Comey finally indicted. Thoughts?
Well, indicted again because the first one got tossed out.
You're right.
Which I actually forgot about until I saw the montage clip and put it in there. But I think it was up to 10 years he could be facing. It's only 2 felony counts.
What's the indictment? What are the actual charges?
I'll bring it up here.
What is it? Threatening a president?
Yes, I'll find the specific.
I remember they said whatever it was the first time wasn't strong enough, and wink, wink. I think we had this conversation. Go back and try again.
First in violation or knowingly and willfully made a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the president of the United States, and I think it was 2 counts of that.
This is actually a great. We need to ask Mike Ferris about this because this is going to roll into the Jimmy Kimmel saga. So Mike Ferris from the National Religious Broadcaster, they're not an association anymore, right?
Yeah, they're just NRB.
Will be with us after this break, and we're kind of going to be dealing with this whole First Amendment where your rights end and mine begin and blah, 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 blah. We'll be back.
Walk into, I know the country by counties. Let's say you walk into a county and you say, hey, I want to get on the voter rolls. I want to register. The clerk doesn't bring out the precinct book and add you to the rolls. She logs into the state central system and adds you to the rolls. Oh, want to delete somebody from the rolls? She doesn't delete you. She logs into the state central system and deletes you from the system. She's not in control of that system. And guess where that file is? Omaha, Nebraska. Okay, so your rolls are not even here, and your clerk is not even here. It's not like she has a copy of the rolls. And so one of the things that I show in my talks, and by the way, I'm speaking tonight in Tuscaloosa, I think it is. Yeah. And I'll show a lot of this information, is if you were to take a copy of your voter rolls today, and then a week from now take another copy of your voter rolls, and compare the two, there'd be a whole bunch of names that were added and removed that your clerk didn't add and remove. Well, who did that? The state does that, and your clerk doesn't even know, though, because the numbers are similar, and so it looks to the clerk like this, just kind of going along, and she's adding and removing a few over time, but she doesn't realize that it's actually going like this. And I have the copies of the rolls, so I can show them the snapshots over time, and they're like, "What?" And so they don't know that's happening, and so I show that.
So the state, but what is making the state remove them without going through the registrars?
Good question. So it used to be Eric. I think recently you've separated from Eric, but you now have Avid. Yeah. And it's basically the same thing. I could show you in your own data. You're doing the same thing as you always did. You just changed name for political reasons.
But isn't that what you want? You want to be checking against other states' records and removing accordingly?
So it sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds like, wouldn't it be great? Except that what's happened is, and I can show you, and we should put this graph when we get to that point. I can show you your own rolls over time, and I can show you that what happened is, in this graph, this is from 1980 to 2024. You had 3 million people of voting age in 1980, and it just kind of steadily climbed in your state, and now you're up to around 4 million people of voting age. See that? That's your voting age people. Here are the number of people in your rolls every 2 years, according to your Secretary of State. And a clean voter rolls should be about 70% of your voting age population. So I would say you were really clean from about 1992 up to about 2012. But then look what happened. Then your voter rolls took off. How come? Well, that's when your state started automatically adding people who get driver's license, who get a car registration, who touch any government agency, who go to jail, who get welfare. They're automatically adding people, and they're not cleaning in a commensurate fashion, so the rolls are getting dirtier. I can talk about the turnouts, but let's not do that yet. I just want you to see that the voter rolls are growing faster than your population, dramatically faster. In fact, you got about 40% too many people in your voter rolls. So what'll happen is I'll show this to people, and they're like, "What? How could we have so many names in the rolls that shouldn't be there?" So what then I do is I give them a copy of their own voter rolls. They start going through them, and I always tell people, look in your own neighborhood. So we look up, it's like I'll be standing in front of a group, and I'll say, give me an address. Give me an address. And we look you up, and they'll say, wait a minute, that's my next-door neighbor. Their boy hasn't lived here for 10 years. How come he's still an active voter in the rolls? In other words, the rolls are really dirty. And when I show them to them themselves, they're shocked. They don't realize how dirty it is. Now, in states like Oregon or Washington or Colorado or California, where they mail a ballot to every person, that's immediately a problem because you're mailing huge amounts of ballots out to people who aren't there. It's ridiculous. Like I was just in a county in Colorado where they got back a fourth of the ballots undeliverable. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, you have equally dirty rolls, but since most of your voting here takes place in person, and by the way, that's a kudos to Alabama. About 98% of you on average vote on election day in person. That's big. Step across the border into the panhandle. Say in Florida, 30% of their ballots are coming in by mail. They're lazy, okay?
Yeah.
You guys show up on election day, and that's a big advantage. So to cheat here, you don't stuffing ballots is not as easy because people are voting in person.
Right.
So here, the way they cheat is they bus people in, they and then they can also mess with the tallies afterwards. So that's an example, for example, of how the clerks are so busy doing their election tasks that they don't realize what's happening in their rolls.
Can
So-
I ask you one
Yeah,
question?
sure. Go ahead.
It looks like you're about to.
Oh,
hit
I'm
another
sorry. I can go
slide.
back to that if you want.
Well, no. Is that 42% more registered voters than the population increase? Statistically, they should be about even.
Yeah, they should track
or
each
should
other.
they?
Yeah, if
they
the
should
population goes up, the
right.
rolls should track.
Right. Is that fraud or is that laziness?
That is deliberate. So what do I mean
Okay.
by deliberate? So what's supposed to happen? There are two federal laws.
Welcome back. I'm Amy Beth Shaver with Allison Sinclair and JP. JP's dad may or may not have brought some orange rolls, and you should be jealous that we are here and we've had we've had the orange roll, and also we've had coffee. So this
You think
has been
we're ready for this?
Yeah,
next
this
part?
has basically been a great day. But we're excited to have this conversation because we're a media company and free speech is a big deal. But we also have explored and asked the question of what are the bounds of free speech. We delved into that a little bit yesterday, but we're thrilled to be joined by the National Religious Broadcasters Chief Counsel. I'm going to make sure I got that right. He's General Counsel. Sorry. It's Mike Ferris. And we are delighted he's with us today. Mike, thank you for coming on the Right Side.
Very happy to be with you, and I wish I had some of those orange rolls.
Listen, you really do. I mean, are you in Nashville? We could get some to you.
No, I'm in the Allegheny Mountains in Maryland, so yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you'd have to fax me here.
Well, maybe next time.
Okay.
But they are delightful. So here's what we'd love to do. We saw the what you guys are doing in regards to Jimmy Kimmel and Melania Trump. So we wanted to touch on that first, and then we would love to get your thoughts on what's going on with James Comey and this second indictment about 86ing 47. But could we start, though, with the Jimmy Kimmel, Melania Trump, and what's your position and what you hope to come out of it?
Sure. Well, as everyone probably knows now, 2 days before the attack by the gunman at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Jimmy Kimmel, in his nightly program, did a mock White House Correspondents' Dinner speech in which he put up an AI image or some kind of captured image of the First Lady and Barron Trump, and basically said, "Here is this expectant widow." Was the key phrase that he used to describe the First Lady, meaning we're waiting for the time that her husband dies. That's this, the clear stated implication of that. And so in a society where about 30% of those 18 to 30 years old believe that violence is okay if politically justified, that is an incitement to violence, which is a clear violation of federal law. Now, the question is, under the First Amendment, you have to be able to show a few things to be able to demonstrate that it's not protected by the First Amendment. First, that it actually is reasonably predictable to incite violence, and secondly, that you intended to do so, and third, that was the reasonable reading of the outcome. So with those three, they're intertwined, related elements. The hardest to prove in this case, it would be, did Jimmy Kimmel really intend to incite people to kill the president? And you don't know that on the surface, one way or the other. So what we've done, NRB has filed a request for an investigation by the FCC into what was going on there to see if it was a violation of this test it's a case called the Brandenburg Standard. And so they can look at the emails, they can look at the show notes, look at Jimmy Kimmel's documents, they can look at whatever they want, a regular investigation to see, did anybody say, well, I hope that this urges somebody to action. If they find something like that, they'll have the smoking gun to show that it clearly was intended. You don't have to find that to prove intent. There's other ways of proving intent, but that would be the easiest, cleanest, most certain way. And so now that's also the standard for a criminal prosecution, which is, very difficult to do, but not impossible. And so I personally think that the standard should be a little less for broadcasting than it is for a criminal law conviction. I think that the standard should be, and this case might actually clarify that, should be that it's reasonably understood to have the reasonable prospect of inciting violence. And if it's predictable that what you're doing is going to incite somebody to take the life of the president, okay, you can't say that on licensed broadcast devices. So, free speech is very strong and it should be for everybody. I don't care if you're trying to incite killing of a president I like or don't like. It doesn't matter. In fact, we said that the first time that there was a clash between Jimmy Kimmel and the Trump administration and the FCC, we said even though we don't like what he was saying, we think it's protected by the First Amendment. And so we stood for him the first time, despite not liking him. But the reality is he's gone too far now. He's crossed a line into advocacy of violence.
Reading the press release that you all put out yesterday, and this is me paraphrasing, you reference a little bit about the culture and that where we are is a little different than where we have been in the past in America. I call it the social compact. We talk about the social compact being broken, where the other side is going to extremes, and we have to respond maybe a little differently than we would in the past because we're not functioning within clear bounds of right and wrong anymore. So I'm curious, outside of the legal system or outside of a complaint, just as believers, how do we approach this kind of new world that we're in going forward?
Well, as believers, I think that we should remember that we should always try to have the right goals, and we should also try to have the right methodology of achieving our goals. We don't believe that the ends justify the means. That's not consistent with the Christian faith. We should say, we want to do the right thing in the right way. And so when we see others not doing that, we ought to call them to that standard and point out when they're not reaching that standard. And if our legal system permits us to hold them to account, we ought to aggressively hold them to account for that. And so, one of my favorite passages in all the Bible is the parable of the persistent widow. And when you get to the end of it, you're thinking this is about prayer or justice, or in the end, it's about the second coming, because Jesus says, "And when I return, will I find faith on the earth?" And so, what does that mean in the context of the parable of the persistent widow? It means no matter what era we're living in, and even if we think we're getting close to the end times, our job is to be demanding justice in the face of injustice, just like the parable of the widow is doing. She was standing for what was right in the face of that which is wrong. That's what we need to be doing. And so, unfortunately, we have been so complacent as Christians that we let stuff go. And Ephesians 5:11 says, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather reprove them." And so, we're not to sit silently and say, we're not going to do those things ourselves. Okay, that's good that we don't do those things. Unfortunately, the number of Christians that get involved in all kinds of wickedness, our people do those things more than they should. But nonetheless, it's not enough to abstain. We also need to stand up and rebuke the evil around us, because people need to know what right and wrong is anymore. And so we got to stand for that what's right. We got to stand for it in the right way, doing the right thing for the right goals, and not compromise in those ways.
So you mentioned, and I very much appreciate what you've just said about the parable of the widow and demanding justice in the face of injustice, but also Ephesians 5:11. But tell us what that means, because now I hear people going, yeah, you're right. We want to hold them to account, aggressively so. What does that look like from your perspective?
Well, it's going to vary on the context. What it matter. I mean, what NRB has done is what is available to us, and that is there's a complaint procedure that you can use for a licensed broadcaster and to file a complaint. We did that. And it's something that any consumer can do. We're a producer and we're an association of producers, not so much a producer ourselves, but we represent broadcasters and content producers. But anybody can file that, and so it means using whatever means are available to you to stand up for the right thing. people, there's something to be said about, posting on Facebook and Twitter or X or whatever it is these days, and making the word known. But there's times to take action, and the action is going to be not self-help, not vigilante justice. None of those things are appropriate, but it's using the right things. We go to the prosecutors and say, prosecute these people. And if the prosecutors won't do it, then we demand the removal of the prosecutor. So we use the mechanisms in front of us to confront evil. And it's good citizenship. It's civics 101 is do what our country allows us to do. In a self-governant country, Republican form of government that has mostly Republican things, but there's some Democratic things as well. We vote as citizens on various things from time to time. And so that's direct democracy, but it's mostly Republican. And so Republican means we turn to our elected representatives and we insist that they enforce the law correctly. We enforce the laws for the borders, enforce the laws for pornography, enforce the laws for whatever it is. We should be insisting that they enforce the laws, because the laws are better than our enforcement practices, in most cases. And so, our laws on immigration are really pretty good. Our enforcement practices haven't been so good over time.
Not so much.
And so that's, I think that's what we need to be doing, and bringing organized political pressure in a responsible fashion on those who have the duty to enforce the law, and then making sure we elect people that will do it the right way, which means you go out and vote, you give money to good candidates, you go out and pass out literature for good candidates, you do the kind of civic activity that makes your country work well. That's what it means. It doesn't mean sitting around complaining. It doesn't mean just talking in an echo chamber with your friends. It means going out and doing stuff.
I love that. We talk about that so often on the show, how hesitant Christians especially are, and a wider degree Republicans, to harness the power they are given when it is given. And just this morning, and actually I'm curious your thoughts on the redistricting, the SCOTUS decision that just came out as well. And so I would love for you to comment on that. But if scripture doesn't prohibit it, we should be using everything
Amen.
in our arsenal to advance good and God's way here in America and on earth. But quickly, your thoughts on the decision that came down this morning.
Well, it's a refreshing change, because the priority is the Constitution of the United States. The Voting Rights Act is subservient to the Constitution of the United States. The 14th Amendment prohibits racial discrimination. If the Voting Rights Act, which is, I believe, it's way, it served a purpose 50, 60 years ago, perhaps. We're way past that time. We need to get rid of the Voting Rights Act, which doesn't mean that getting rid of that doesn't mean that states can racially discriminate. The opposite. It means the states have to stop racially discriminating these days. That's what it's come to mean. And so what the Supreme Court has said is the Voting Rights Act provides no excuse for deliberately drawing district lines on racial grounds. And so they're saying we're going back to what Martin Luther King argued for, what Frederick Jackson Frederick Douglass, I should say, I'm sorry, Frederick Douglass argued for. They argued for a colorblind constitution. And that phrase is in the dissent of the infamous decision of Plessy versus Ferguson. Justice John Marshall Harlan is the one who said, we have a colorblind constitution. And Thurgood Marshall, who became a Supreme Court justice. In fact, I've argued 2 cases in the Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall wrote the opinion for my unanimous victory for a blind ministerial student in the 1980s. And so having argued in front of Justice Thurgood Marshall, I take a little bit of personal history with that and resonate that he argued for a colorblind constitution when he was the counsel in Brown versus Board of Education. So that's what the Supreme Court has given us this morning, is a blueprint for a colorblind constitution, saying racism, we don't care what the reason for it is wrong.
That's a good word. So, would you mind giving us your opinion then on James Comey and this second indictment? What are your thoughts? Will anything come of this? Will he be held to account?
Well, it's good that the indictment's in North Carolina rather than someplace that's you've got jury nullification going on in some very, very liberal areas. I mean, what the message literally means, 86 means to take somebody out, and 47 is a clear reference to President Trump. So when James Comey says 86-47, there are enough people that know exactly what that means that I think he has passed the line on the Brandenburg test that we reviewed earlier relative to Jimmy Kimmel. He has incited violence. Now, the defense will be, I didn't intend to. Well, when you're the former director of the FBI, you don't get a lot of leeway on saying, I was just kidding when I used code words to say we should take somebody out. I mean, kill somebody so that we're not taking them out politically or voting them out of office. We're talking about actual death threat. And so, I think he's in trouble. And if you have a courageous prosecutor and a jury that will follow the law, and we should be careful because, the First Amendment is important, but there's a line here. And so, it's hard to prove, and it should be hard to prove, because otherwise, if it's easy to prove, you're in the situation now in Germany. They've got the people who work for X, Elon Musk organization, in jail because they refuse to censor tweets on their system. And it's illegal to criticize German officials in Germany today. German government officials. We don't want that. But violence is one of the key lines. There's only a few recognized exceptions to the pretty strong, almost universal rules of the First Amendment. But the advocacy of physical violence is one of those exceptions. And we got people going over that line, and we got to get that line clear and strong in our country.
Yep. It's a theme that we're watching all too often these days. Mike Farris, thank you so much for joining us. I'm not even sure how we got you on here, except we ran into Troy in Dallas this past week, so maybe he vouched for us, but we would love to have you back. Please keep us updated. We appreciate all that you actually have done with ADF, with now the National Religious Broadcasters, and keep up the good work and keep us posted. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad to come back anytime. Just ask.
Thank you.
Love it.
Okay.
Wow. This has been quite a day.
Kind of a big deal.
Mike Farris. What?
Yeah.
Catherine Engelbrecht?
Casual.
Sure.
Just casual.
I know we're supposed to be grown women, but there are times when you just think, Lord, that's ridiculous.
Kind of makes you laugh.
It does.
A little bit.
I hope we never lose
have no
our
business.
awe.
Well, Grace is very kind.
Thank you,
Well,
Grace.
That's actually, Grace. Well,
She's our
Grace is
contact.
nice. God's grace is really nice.
God's grace is great.
But Grace.
Grace, our friend Grace that we met through Ton Starnes.
Just throw your phone.
I'm just like overwhelmed.
Ridiculous. And then orange rolls, coffee.
Yeah, you missed. Mike Farris said he wanted an orange roll. We're trying to figure out how to ship it to him in Maryland, in the mountains.
In the Allegheny Mountains.
I didn't even know what those mountains are.
They are Allegheny they kind of go in that little,
Are they by the Oka
Maryland, Pennsylvania, and I don't know if they go all the way in. It's in Appalachia by the time you get to West Virginia.
You know those things.
But I drove it. So you learn, that's what that is when you're in your car by yourself.
The Alligator Mountains.
That's what I
We're
thought
going
you
to
said
get
at
the
first.
Alligator Mountains. Now Mike Farris is never coming back.
Yeah.
Those girls that said the Alligator Mountains.
Allegheny. I
Man.
think so.
Well, we're going to definitely go to the NRB next year. So
We are.
Clock
in
it.
Washington, D.C.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes before we wrap up. And we had one more story to cover. And the story from an adoptive mom and an adopted child, grateful for her birth mom, for her adoptive family. They're all my people. Brandon Gill is a modern day knight. He is a hero. And it was a masterclass on how you talk about abortion to the people performing it, or, as this woman kept claiming, advocating for it.
For reproductive health and blah, 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 blah. JP, do you have that full clip? I can't remember how long it is.
Well, the full clip is about 2.5 minutes, but we can play a little bit of the beginning if you
Could we please? Because
at least get to where the part where you go, ugh.
An advocate for abortion, for abortion policy. What's your favorite type of abortion?
I am an advocate for patients having access to the full realm of reproductive health care.
But do you have a preferred method of abortion that you like?
I do not.
Let me read through a couple different methods, and I want to get your take on how much you like these. The first type is called a suction abortion. This is when the cervix is dilated and a strong suction, 29 times the power of a household vacuum cleaner, tears the baby's body apart and sucks it through the hose into a container. Do you prefer that method?
I stand by my former testimony.
That sounds kind of gross, doesn't it? Sounds pretty gruesome. Do you agree? It does to me.
I stand by how I answered your question fully and accurately.
Okay, what about this one? This one is called dilation and curettage. After dilation of the cervix, a sharp looped knife is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut into pieces and extracted, often by suction. Do you prefer that method?
What I believe we are here to talk about today is the FACE Act. We are not here to talk
I'm
about
asking
the
you, you're
legality
a
of
pro-abortion
abortion.
advocate. I'm asking if you prefer the dilation and curettage method.
I am a access to reproductive health care advocate.
Okay, that's so funny that we use the word reproductive health. Ironic, because what's been reproduced is getting murdered. So interesting when they are confronted with the reality of what they do.
Yeah.
We live in the realm of reality. They live in the realm of figurative language that cloaks their murderous agenda. And I'm always delighted, in a sick way, that they can't deal. But that was a masterclass on how to talk to that people group.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to just be for abortion, and then on the name, you just hear the term abortion and you don't actually think about what it is and what it's actually doing. If you've ever seen an ultrasound of an abortion taking place, you will want to
throw
up and also have righteous judgment against everybody that's ever partaken in that. But they need to be confronted with what it actually is doing, which is actually ripping apart babies, and it's violent. And there's actually been studies about a certain point in the womb that babies can actually feel pain. So you can just say what it is they want to conveniently be allowed to do whatever they want to do without facing the repercussions or facing the consequences of their actions. And those consequences are you're violently killing a baby. But if you just say abortion and my body, my choice, and then you don't want to confront what you're actually doing, then they can just do whatever they want. But they have to be confronted with what it actually is doing and the harsh reality of it.
You can watch the baby actually like push and try and save itself, like struggle against the suction, struggle against what's coming at it. It is traumatizing. I do want to say, like I have 2 adopted children. Abs is adopted herself. It's like that is a hard decision. This is not when you have this discussion, it's like you always have to qualify. Mothers are in really hard places. If you have chosen to have an abortion, there is grace, there is redemption, there is a new life. But it's kind of like I kind of go back to like our vaccine with our kids and just not knowing, not asking questions. I think you do need to be confronted before you do that. This is actually what's happening. You're not just walking in, your friend takes you to the clinic, you walk in, you get a little procedure and you go to lunch. And that little space of time, this is what's happening. Then we can have the discussion. But for Brandon Gill, and he looks just like Clark Kent. It's kind of, I've never really looked at him. I was like, Superman. And he made me laugh because at one point, if you watch his face, he's like, I got her. Like you can kind of see, because she starts getting visibly uncomfortable, which is exactly, and it's what Mike Ferris was saying. We use every tool at our disposal. We have to be sly and savvy and smart to defeat this sick enemy. And that was just bravo.
It was bravo.
Brandon Gill.
We met new friends from White Rose Resistance in Dallas last week. We'll reach out and try to get them on. The things that they're doing are incredible, starting even with the education they're doing with the 1819, 1918, I don't know. Okay. Look up White Rose Resistance. Can you look that up for me real quick, please? And it's Seth Gruber, and it's a documentary, and it traces the history of eugenics and abortion. It talks about Margaret Sanger, and it is incredibly enlightening. So there's that, number one, even though I can't remember the name of it. I
can't remember either. I think it's 1916.
Is it 1916? There's so many numbers.
Or maybe it's,
I don't know. But then there's that. And then their advocacy work is absolutely incredible. We met AJ Hurley several years ago. We had him on our original podcast, dealing with the babies, fully baby bodies that were found in DC, and his work there with that. So they're doing that as well.
Oh, it's a 1916 project.
Thank you. I got that totally wrong. 1916 project. I should remember, because Chris's, one of his favorite movies is 1917.
Oh, wow.
1916 project. And then from there, what Allison said, because we must take every opportunity to tell you that 43% of all women have had interaction with abortion. So some of you listening right now are brokenhearted about this. We want to tell you that there are resources for you. There's a book called Aborted Women Silent No More. You can look into Abby Johnson's work, who was the director of the largest Planned Parenthood in the country in Bryan, Texas. She is now a pro-life advocate. Incredible. There are Students for Life. There are resources available for you so that you can deal with whatever it is that you're walking through, but you are not alone. And it will make the grace of God even more magnificent when you can, first of all, deal with it, recognize it, and then talk to God about it. But you're never alone. We want you to know that. And then finally, for the girls who may be pregnant, because maybe one of you you're a teenager and you're pregnant like my birth mom. There are thousands of pregnancy resource centers across the country that help you and your baby and perhaps the father. So you're not without hope, no matter what stage of this journey that you're in. But it first starts with us doing what Brandon Gill did, confronting the evil that takes place when abortion happens. That has to be first.
Can we go back to the start of the show when we were talking about
These
nuts, the squirrel?
Yeah, the meth-fueled squirrel. That's easier.
But this is so necessary. It's uncomfortable and it's not fun, but this is just where we are. JP,
Yep.
quick, would you rather anything?
Would you rather have to bark like a dog every time you laughed, or moo like a cow every time you get angry?
Moo like a cow.
I'm gonna moo, because if you're mooing and angry, the confrontation is over with a moo. You can't not laugh.
My husband would laugh at me so hard.
Yeah, next time Jared comes at me, I'm gonna be like, moo. He's gonna be like, yeah, I knew you were a heifer all along.
Yeah, exactly.
Such a heifer. Y'all, we actually will not be here tomorrow.
My dad has surgery and JP has a funeral to attend.
And they would not leave me the studio on my own, which is probably smart. We do have a huge news drop tomorrow. Look out for that on Yellowhammer News. And we'll see you back here on Friday.